breaking down all the plays and getting you in the action. We've got you covered all season long. Welcome to the BCSN Nation podcast, powered by Marco's Pizza.
Indeed. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 27 of the BCSN Nation podcast, powered by Marco's Pizza. Go ahead and place an order, and you can be enjoying our sponsor's product while you're watching the show here today. Greg Franke's sitting in for Justin, who is in Italy, actually covering the IFL. That's pretty exciting. Great place to be. Visited there once, and I said, passed up chance to go to Rome because I had work to do. And I thought, if I don't do this, I'm going to regret it the rest of my life. That was 30 years ago, and I still regret it. So, Justin, if you have a chance to go to Rome, if you're not working too much, don't pass it up. That's my advice to you. Of course, Deon Thompson, the jiu-jitsu, champion of the world, champion of the universe?
No, man. Just a regular guy that likes to, we call it the art of folding clothes with people in them. You know what I mean? So, no, but great. It's like old times, man. We haven't worked together in a minute, so this is going to be awesome.
Well, and it's March 1st, so it's officially March Madness. Everything up until this point felt like March Madness, but it was actually February fever, or I don't know what you want to say, but that was just a preliminary to what we have now, and we're going to be going over all the games. But before we do that, I had a chance a few days ago to see something really incredible. And I thought I would throw it out here. And I think you and you're a national champion in jiu-jitsu, right?
American National Master Champion.
Being such a high-level practitioner of an individual sport, you're going to appreciate this. So I had an opportunity to cover the state swimming championships for the OHSAA over the past weekend. And Scotty Buff, the outstanding swimmer from St. Francis, not only set a national, not just a state record, a national record. He shattered it by like 45 hundredths of a second in the 100-yard butterfly. I mean, he took the set by an Olympian, a former Olympian, and just destroyed it. And that was just one of the most amazing things that I have ever seen, a tremendous accomplishment. And who knows, he could well be representing this country in international competition. And you know, as somebody who has really been a high performer in individual sports, what goes into getting to that level and the work and the dedication that it entails?
Well, I think it's exactly what you said. It's the work when people aren't around, to reach that level. A lot of things have to go your way. Obviously, he has the athleticism. He probably has an outstanding coach. And the fact, when you get there, you just got to say, you know what, I'm here too, And a lot of times I think people get caught up. If you don't do an individual sport, what I'm saying is, a lot of people get caught up in the way a person looks, in the way, okay, I read about this guy. You know what? You have to say to yourself, I'm good too. I'm here for a reason. And I think that's exactly what Scotty said. So shouts out to him.
When I was on the mat with you in jiu-jitsu that night, that's what I was saying. I'm here too, but it didn't do me any good. I learned a lot though.
You didn't have any experience.
I didn't expect to do well against you, but it was fun though, I have to say that. All right, well, we're going to talk about some of the games that were played last night. But by the way, we will mention, of course, that you can follow us on BCSN social, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, anything that they're going to invent in the next 5 minutes that you've never heard of. I'm sure that we'll be right there with our social media presence. And, of course, you can follow us on BCSNNation.com, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Have I left anything out? Okay, so that's all those places you can catch us. So we'll start with the things that I had the opportunity to see firsthand, because I think that's a good way to do it. Last night, I was at Sandusky for the girls' regionals, the girls' regional semifinals, and Springfield. Actually, both Fremont Ross and Springfield were leading at halftime in their games. We could have had an all Northwest Ohio regional final, which would have really been something. But Springfield won over Magnificat. Magnificat was an independent team, 20-5 record. They played against a lot of the top area competition, the classic in the country, and a lot of highly ranked teams, and done well. They had a size advantage. It looked like it was definitely going to be tough for Springfield. Springfield, though, has been known to be a really high-powered offensive team. Kendall Carruthers, she scored 28 points and 31 against Anthony Wayne. But for the last 3 games, they played a totally different style of play, this kind of a slowdown style in a way. But it reminded me of a game we worked way back when we talked about it. Was 2012 or 13 and somewhere in there.
It may, Greg, you're dating us, man. But go ahead.
Hey, you know what? They look at us, we're dating, okay? So it's no secret.
Right.
Central played Whitmer, and it's to this day, and I was telling you, it's probably the most memorable high school game I can ever remember seeing on BCSN. And Central, obviously, that was back in the Nigel Hayes era, and Whitmer had a lot of outstanding players and a size advantage and everything. On Central, their great coach, Jim Welling, I think he figured out that if we're going to win this game, we have to try something a little different. And they controlled the ball. They played a delay offense, but it wasn't a stall. They were constantly moving. They were constantly looking for good shots, but they weren't going to do anything until a perfect play was there. And they had the ability to do that and wear down the defense. And I think they won that game like 27-25. Springfield did the exact same thing last night. It worked.
Just to touch on what Coach Welling did, what made that so effective is he had the athletes, and he had guys that could score. You know, Coach could score like in the 60s. And if you remember him when he was at Owens, he was scoring the hundreds. So that strategy worked perfectly because he had the guys, and I think it caught Whitmer totally off guard. Same thing that's going on with Springfield. You got Kendall Carruthers, who's Division I, level athlete. You got Gretchen Sigmund, outstanding post player. And when you watch them, when you scout them, Coach Hodges figured out a way. And the way that works is it's not saying we're taking the air out. It's saying, hey, guys, if we don't have a layup, don't shoot it. And before you know it, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Nobody in the history of high school basketball can defend for over 2 minutes. No, somebody's going to fall asleep. And when you catch that person falling asleep, I think that's when you hit. And like I say, shouts out to Coach Hodges. He's executed, and it becomes fun for the kids, once they learn to execute it like that.
Kendall Carruthers had probably scored more points, and literally saying now they beat Start in the previous game, 27-24, more points in multiple games than the whole team got playing this way. So the thing I think is even more fascinating in a way than what we talked about with what Central Catholic under Jim Welling did back in the day was that they've changed their style in a series of games. At first Perrysburg, then Start, now Magnificat. They basically took what they had been doing, put it on the back burner, which they might pull it out again. It's still there. Carruthers made some big plays when they had to be made, but they've changed their style so radically and are winning at a very high level.
Well, this is the first time they've been to the regional. So, that Springfield community, that Holland Springfield community, they're excited about it. But once again, you have to credit the coaching. You have to credit scouting, and you have to credit the buy-in. See, a lot of times, if you don't have buy-in, it doesn't work. So Kendall Carruthers is saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to sacrifice maybe my 20 points a game because I see the bigger picture. And when you get a bunch of kids that believe and buy in, if you don't believe me, watch their bench. Their bench is just as excited as if they're in the game. So that's coaching. That's all coaching. That's getting kids to say, hey, you know what? We got to see the bigger picture, and it's working.
What a great testament that is for somebody, too, who's used to being the big scorer, who's used to putting up those kind of numbers to accept that. I think she got 6 points last night. There were 3 players who had higher point total last night than she did, and yet she was very, very key figure in victory. She kind of reminded me of, now I'm really going to date us, Walt Frazier, right? So he was great
before me.
He's a Hall of Famer, though, so everybody should know. He's one of the
top
50 players of all time at one time. I'd still put him there. But he was great at stealing the ball. But what he would do is he would wait until just the moment where it would be most impactful and most discouraging for the other team to steal the ball, take it down. And Carruthers in the game last night, she scored 6 points, but most of those points came in the fourth quarter, and there was one in particular that she was just sort of biding her time out at midcourt, and then all of a sudden she saw an opening. Boom, she was through it. She laid the ball in. It gave them like a 7-point lead with only 2 or 3 minutes left to go, and it had a huge impact at that moment. And so she still had that to pull out, and yet to be able to accept a reduction in her scoring and basically the role that she had typically played as far as being the star, if you want to use that term, speaks volumes for somebody like that.
So she's a senior. So at what point, you've scored, you have your scholarship. I want to get down to the state. I want to go there. And when you get that, like I said, when you get the buy-in, I bet practice is a lot more focused. It's fun. And credit to coaches' assistants, because when you do scouting reports on teams, it's not just the head coach. He's the front guy, but you got other people in there who are with his input or adding their input to it. So, like I said, I'm excited for that Springfield community. First time they've ever gone to the regional, and I hope everybody goes out and support them.
Yeah. Well, speaking of community, Fremont Ross in the earlier game, that was just something. Walk into the gym over an hour before the game. The stands were already filled with Fremont Ross fans making all kinds of noise and whooping it up and supporting the team. That gym was packed, and it's a pretty good-sized gym over there at Sandusky. And they were playing really well. They were leading 25-20, and it looked like they had it going. They were on a trajectory to win the game, and it was really something, that Olmsted Falls team that seemed to be having all kinds of problems, especially in terms of offensive rebounding. And Fremont Ross had the size advantage, and they had good athleticism, and they were really playing hard. And something happened at halftime, and Olmsted Falls just came out with a lot more intensity, and they just started dominating the offensive glass when they couldn't get an offensive rebound in the first half. And then they had one player, their coach said, well, we just do offense by committee. Well, maybe so, but they had one player in Paige Kohler that she was their go-to player when they needed her to put the team on her shoulders. She got 25 points, and it was a total turnaround. And how does that happen? Like you're dominating the game, and then all of a sudden you start getting beaten in the same areas that you were just dominating the other team.
This is why we love this time of the year, because it's going to happen in the high school level. We're going to see it Selection Sunday once they pick March Madness. It's really real. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know. And that's the thing when you're dealing with kids sometime, when you're coaching. I'm sure the coach did everything he could to try to maybe stop the bleeding. But, as well as I know, momentum is huge at any level. Once Olmsted Falls, once they got that momentum going, it was just kind of difficult for them to stop. Doesn't take away, though, the great season that Fremont Ross had. Particularly, I love Destiny Robinson. I think she is a next-level point guard. I mean, handles, leadership. She has the total package. I think they're going to be good again next year.
Yeah, they really put a lot of pressure on her, and she made a lot of outstanding plays, but I think she probably learned a few things too. And she's a junior. She's got another year, and I think she'll put those lessons to good use next year.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's move on to some of the boys' games, and there were some great ones there too. And I guess we'll start with St. John's and Findlay, which CJ Hornbeak won with a buzzer-beating shot, 35-32. It had been a tie game at that point, and Findlay had just really, I think, surprised everybody with the way that they handled Anthony Wayne in that game coming into that, and they almost kept their season alive. At St. John's, though, showed, especially Hornbeak, their leader, showed that he could come through when he had to.
We talked about this. Rhett and I talked about it, and I remember I was teasing Rhett last week on the show because he got put on the spot, which is the better league, the track or the NLL. Rhett said the track, and it's no disrespect to the NLL, but I wasn't surprised when Findlay won the game against Anthony Wayne.
By 40?
Now, that part, I didn't expect all that. No, I ain't going to sit here and lie to you. But, if you watch last night's game, another low-scoring affair, it was 30-32. The Stars stepped up. Jake Bishop, all track, hits 2 free throws. 8.6 seconds to go. They get the ball inbounds to Hornbeak. He dribbles the length of the floor, and I can't remember who was trying not to foul. It was almost an uncontested 3, low percentage shot, but it's the star on the other team. He knocks the shot down. So it's only fitting. The top guys showed up where it counted at the end.
Yeah. And Findlay, and that I'll say just about that Anthony Wayne. It might have been 30.
It was
big score.
Yeah, we're watching the studio.
But Anthony Wayne really, really laid it all out there in beating Bowling Green to get that share of the NLL championship. And sometimes it's tough when you have a game like that to have to crank it up again against a team that's really going to put you through the ringer again.
Yeah, and like I said, you got to give credit to, you figure Findlay and St. John's, they finished kind of in the middle. And look what they're doing now. Lima Senior the same way. I know we're going to talk about, but we're talking about the track right now is really looking dominant, in our area. But
that having been said, there's a couple of counter arguments that we're going to get to. But first I want to talk about, because St. John's and Whitmer, and that matchup will be coming. But this Whitmer just dismantled Start 61-25. And yet earlier in the season, Start was up 33-10 at halftime on Whitmer, ended up only winning by 10, but they just had all their own way with them. And how do you go from that kind of a swing in 2 games with the same 2 teams on the floor?
what I saw last night, I saw Coach Stacy make some adjustments. He didn't press the whole game. He played the man-to-man, but they were very physical. Starts not as deep as Whitmer. You know, Coach Stacy had fouls to give. And like I said, to me, they just looked a little more physical. They rebounded exceptionally well. They defended well. They got to the basket. They did everything that they could do and they weren't hitting shots. I think they were settling for some lower percentage shots that they were making during the year. But I didn't really see that as a blowout. I thought it was going to be a much closer game too.
Yeah. Well, looking at the previous game, how could you not? But sometimes it's something really profound. Sometimes it's just as simple as you weren't making your shots in one game and you were in the other game.
There you go. Right. Sometimes, we like to make it seem like it's rocket science, and just some days you just don't have it. But the time not to have it is not now. I mean, that's the key is problem.
To have it on the night when you got to have it.
Exactly. Right.
St. John's Whitmer, what do you think there?
It's going to be a good game. If you watch the games earlier, St. John's, they were up early on pretty much. I remember they went up early on Central. I think they went up early on Whitmer. They're capable of beating anybody, and I tell you why, because they have shooters. You got Jalen Murphy, you got Frazier, you got Hornbeak, you got Kowalczyk's kid. Now he's knocking down three. So if you can hit those shots, you always have a chance at winning. But I think Whitmer's very physical. They're strong on the inside. They're going to speed you up. I think that's going to be a good game. It's not going to be, I know everybody has Whitmer winning, and I guess if you look at it on paper, Whitmer should win, but I'm telling you, this St. John's team, they progressively got better and better as the season went on.
Yeah, and the game they won was only 35-32. Are they going to pull out the Jim Welling playbook?
I think you keep it low. I think if it gets 50 and over, I like Whitmer. Below 50, St. John's has a chance. But, if you start letting those guys, Derek James, Antoine West, all those guys start penetrating and kicking and beating you up on the glass, you got to rebound with Whitmer. That's the thing. They're very physical, so you got to get a body on those guys.
Well, St. John's, going back to that Heinschel era, and even I think they've maintained that character now. They have the ability to control the ball, run their offense, take time off the clock, make the defensive team work, all the things that we were talking about with that regard to that Springfield game. And honestly, I think that probably is a good approach for them to take in that game.
Well, that's the best strategy. Like I said, Whitmer has a ton of firepower. They got guys coming off the bench. They got fouls to give. And once again, I'm not sure St. John's is as deep as Whitmer in terms of with fouls. Whitmer, they got big guys too, that they can bring in. You got to limit those guys to one shot, though. But the thing about Whitmer, they will speed you up because even though they didn't press much, they will press you, and they'll force the ball out of maybe Hornbeak's hands, and other guys are going to have to step up and make shots.
Well, getting back to that NLL track debate, because we have a couple of other games that are exhibits, I guess, that we can call them. Bowling Green played Lima Senior last night, and they were probably both about the same, middle of the pack in their respective leagues. Bowling Green had a 9-point lead at halftime. They were still leading. With just a minute left in the game, they had a 2-point lead and took overtime for Lima Senior to pull it out. And even though Lima Senior had been more towards the middle of the pack, they had good wins over Central and Whitmer. So They were definitely peaking at this time.
In the week.
Bowling Green gave them all they can handle.
Well, once again, Lima Senior started off, they weren't on anybody's radar. Neither was Bowling Green, in all fairness. I thought they had a great year, outstanding
Going
season.
Into the year, I thought they'd be much improved. Perrysburg just dismantled them in the opening game, and they did it again. But again, everybody except Perrysburg, Bowling Green was very tough against.
But then you look at Lima Senior. Their footprint has always been toughness. Coach Quincy, I don't know what he does to those guys, but those guys always come out hungry. And I think that's what we saw last night. I mean, I talked about this when the brackets first came out, and we can even run it back. I said, you know what? Watch out for St. John's and Lima Senior. I think they have a bracket to where maybe they can get to a district final. And it's starting to play out. So
his freshman guard came in and got 17 points for him. Maybe it's his next Xavier. Who knows?
He's got a junior high team that everybody keeps talking about. That's incredible. So that's probably why he's sitting back. They're definitely overachieving right now. I can tell you that. And you have to worry about those guys because be careful of the team that maybe nobody expected, but they're starting to believe now that they can win. And Lima's like a lot of those other communities, like Fremont Ross. They're going to bring the whole town out. Guys are going to support those guys. And, hey, who knows what's going to happen.
Well, then another track NLL matchup, and this time the NLL team wins. Perrysburg over St. Francis, 53-41, and we're naming great coaches here, Jim Welling and Ed Heinschel, and Dave Boyce has got to be on that list. It's just incredible what he does. He's been having this team for 20-some years, as long as we've been around, even longer than BCSN, and before that, for many years before he arrived at Perrysburg, and he knows how to put together a team that plays as a unit. I think about that line in the movie Hoosiers, which is considered one of the greatest sports movies ever. It's like, let's be really clear what we want here. All five working as a unit towards a common goal. Team. And that's the way his teams play. And when you saw the way that game was described, and he talked about it, saying we were running our offense well, we were getting open shots, we were making the shots we had to make. I mean, I could just envision the way they were playing, and nobody's better at taking another team apart than Perrysburg when they're on their game. And they won, and they also shut down Ryan Coop, who was the big threat for St. Francis. Avery Hunt really handled him well defensively, and it added up to a solid win for the NLL team over a good track team.
Now, let's talk about that, because
I'm just saying the facts.
I know that, but they took off at the end. Now, if we go into the fourth quarter now, we're talking about the game was very close with about maybe 3 minutes to go, 3-4 minutes to go. Heck came out. I mean, and St. Francis, another team, 4 wins last year, 14
this year. A great
improvement. 14 this year. So you tell me, and they just weren't cupcakes. So, they got the train rolling. And it's funny, Greg, you probably don't see it on Fridays. I always get teased because I said at the beginning of the year, I said, I'm on the Perrysburg bandwagon. I predicted they'd win the league. I love what Coach Boyce does. And you're right. He has those guys. He has a system in place. And those guys really understand the system.
And they buy into it. You're talking about buy-in, and they'd have it no matter who the cast of characters is.
The same.
He gets the buy-in.
I know Brad Woznicki's probably watching this, loving this right now. But, yeah, he gets the buy-in to the guys. And there's something to be said about a winning culture, okay? Winning culture. They win in football. They win in basketball, wrestling. People don't understand what that means. You don't want to be the sport that's not winning when you got all these great teams around there. But Coach Boyce does such an outstanding job. He has good assistants too. And you're right. No matter who he puts out there, Matt Watkins obviously starts with he and Austin Schultz. But then you got the twins coming in there, playing exceptionally well. Avery Hunt balled out last night.
Bookend defensive ends, so they're tough.
Yeah,
he had to be playing Ryan Coop the way he did, and he did a good job on him, although you're not going to stop him from scoring. But he at least limited the damage he could inflict, and he got 16 points on his own.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and Coach Boyce is a guy who has transitioned into the new coaching era. He's an old school guy, but he's figured out a way to transition his style to fit with this new type of player, and it's been very effective. I mean, his zones, it starts with defense with them, and they run outstanding play. So I like what he does with his zones. He can mix and match up different things. It may look like a man, but it's really a matchup. Sometimes he plays you man now. So as a coach, there's that constant chess match where you got to figure out, okay, what is this guy doing? What plays do I tell my guys to run?
No question. And he just absolutely has them playing basketball, I think, the way that it's meant to be played. But in past years, if you look at the way things typically go, is Perrysburg, they can beat anybody. But sometimes if they get up against a team that is super athletic, can maybe disrupt their finely tuned pattern game, that can cause a problem. And maybe Lima Senior is that kind of team. How do you see that?
I agree exactly with what you said. If you watch the game against Anthony Wayne is a pretty athletic team. They're very physical. Gave Perrysburg a lot of problems. Okay, Springfield the same way. So, that's usually kind of their kryptonite when you get guys that can, and depending on how they're going to call the game, Lima Senior, we know they're going to have athletes. They're going to get after it. And if you can't handle the pressure, if you can't handle the ball against those guys, it's going to be a long, long game. However, there is a big however. I think Perrysburg has been very consistent throughout the season. Yeah, they had a little lull there, but I think if they play the way they're supposed to play, it's going to be a better game than people think. I know everybody has Perrysburg winning, but I do think if Lima Senior can make it ugly, maybe get a few guys in some foul trouble, who knows what can happen.
Well, it's one of the reasons why sports is such a fascinating thing, and we talked about it before with regard to Whitmer Start won earlier and even won pretty handily, and then the totally opposite result the next time. And another thing that's fascinating about sports is that you can't just narrow it down to a formula. You can't say, okay, A beat B and B beat C, so therefore A is going to beat C. So here we go. Perrysburg played Bowling Green twice during the season and beat them badly, let's be honest, especially that opening game of the season. Bowling Green was very competitive against everybody else. So they came and took Lima Senior to overtime and barely missed winning the game in regulation time. So now you've got a team that struggled to beat Bowling Green going up against a team that really handled Bowling Green very, very well. So somebody might look at that on paper and say, well, then Perrysburg's got a huge edge in this game, but it doesn't always work that way.
No, because I can counter and say Lima Senior beat Whitmer and they beat Central, and I believe Central beat Perrysburg this year. So you're right. You can't.
That's what makes sports fun, playing that game.
Right. Don't look at that formula because you never know. And I think people arguably Whitmer and Central are the two top teams. Well, they are the top teams in the track. And Lima Senior, hey, you don't know what's going to happen, and that's why you guys have to stay tuned in. You got to stay locked. Listen to this guy; he's outstanding, and enjoy the games.
And don't just think because you won one game, that means you're going to win the next game.
This time of the year, I don't think nobody's thinking that. There's a lot of pressure. So, yeah.
So if it gets right down to it, let's say Perrysburg were to face Whitmer, let's say, or something like that, what would you see happening?
Ooh, that would be a great matchup because we're talking about a total dichotomy of styles here. I'll say this. I think Perrysburg physically can match up with Whitmer, just in terms of the physicality of the big guys that they have. And I think they have depth-wise, that would actually be a good game. That probably would be a really good game. Whoever can impose whoever style will come out the winner on that.
Yeah, well, it certainly would be enjoyable to watch, that's for sure.
And James and Watkins, that'd be a great matchup. You got Schultz and West. I mean, there's some great individual matchups, some storylines here if that happens.
So let's talk about some other games, interesting matchups. Central Catholic, of course, had a really good year, and they're in Division II. Sometimes that's too bad that they and Whitmer don't have postseason rematches and so forth, being in different divisions, or is it Division III, but different divisions. Rossford, and because they've been in different divisions all over the years, they're always in a different division. But Rossford and Wauseon, that could be a good game, as Wauseon has beaten Rossford. Rossford's been a dominant team, but whoever wins that game, I think maybe Rossford is generally considered to have the edge, but that could go either way. But them against Central, whoever comes out of that game against Central will be a very good game. That's going to be
the game. And Rossford has something that nobody else has. They got a 6'10" guy that's very athletic.
Who's dominant.
Yeah, who's dominant. He's not just, as we call, a big stiff. I mean,
I remember a 6'9" guy who was just Tim Reiser was coaching, and he just looked great in the warm-ups, but he didn't play too much during the game. But this is not, we're not talking about that kind of situation.
Vorse isn't the guy just to help the airport when you walk through the airport look good. He actually can play. They got to get through. They can't look ahead, though. They got to take care of business, and sometimes when people start listening to us and podcasts and things like that, as much as you tell the kids, don't pay attention to that, focus. They have to focus because you're right. Wauseon did beat them. Wauseon traditionally is strong out there as well. They're another, in my opinion, that has great culture in terms of what they do in other sports. But basketball-wise, they've been consistent. They've been good for a long time.
Tonight, there's a good game. And from one of the teams that's down in our Erie BCSN, Margaretta, but going up against Cardinal Stritch, and they had a great season this year. They lost their chance for a TAC title because they lost to a really inspired Maumee Valley team. It's got a lot of talent in their own right. They had enough talent to contend for the league, there's no doubt, and they had a lot of times where they weren't playing with their full lineup this year and everything else. But if it wasn't for that game, if Stritch had won that game, then they would have had an opportunity to be right there with the TAC. So they've got a great team, and they're playing Margaretta tonight, and I think that they still have the capability of making a good tournament run.
I agree. I think that last game when they beat Emmanuel, something clicked. Something in their confidence, something just clicked with those guys. And at that level, they have a lot of size. They got good guard play. I love Burton. Burton's outstanding. They defend really well. They rebound. They have all the ingredients. They really do. So I think they can be successful.
Of course, Jamie Kazmarek did a great job with them and before moving on to St. Francis, but they still play that same way. I mean, he instilled a culture there, and he instilled a system there that is still surviving his personal presence and a toughness there. And certainly once you're able to do that, then you've got a chance for long-term success.
Yeah, and like you said, it's predicated on toughness. Toughness doesn't require size, doesn't require ability. It's a mindset. And when you develop that tough mindset, that never say die mindset, which is what they had, because I watched that Emmanuel game. It was nip and tuck the whole way, but those guys didn't want to give an inch, and it came down to actually, Jerry Easter had an opportunity to hit a shot at the end of the game, didn't make it. So, but after that, those guys just took off.
I was thinking about this with that Emmanuel team, and you start to when you start to remember the fathers of the players, you know that you're dating yourself a little bit. But I remember Nate Miles' father very well when he was playing for Libby, and he was outstanding. And I remember Zeb Jackson's father gaining 1,000 yards for Bowling Green. And I remember Jamie Thompson's father. In fact, I'm with him right now. So, but it is great to see these guys come along.
I remember Jerry Easter. We went to high school together. So I went to high school with his dad. So, I'm like, wow. And he comes from a basketball family. Like, make no mistake about it. He has an uncle, Ronnie Easter, that played for Youngstown State. Jerry was a good basketball player. Mike Richardson, which is his uncle, Brad Easter. So he comes from a long line of really good athletes.
No question about it. And he averaged 33.4 points a game this year. So that really is, that's almost like Wilt averaging 50.
I know, it's 33 a game, guys.
Rogers got beat by Norwalk, and Norwalk has a great program, boys and girls. They won our first year in Erie. They won the state championship for boys, which was really something because that was a Hoosiers kind of story when they had much, much smaller school than all the teams they were competing with. And this Norwalk girls team this year, 23-3, they beat Rogers 40-30. It's not the Zia Cook team anymore, but they still have a really outstanding team, and they did well to get so far, and they've got a good future too, I think.
I think they overachieved. You know what I mean? And you can build off this. Coach Smith, he's been there before. Zia Cook, who is playing great basketball, all SEC, undefeated. Guys, if you haven't caught South Carolina, please catch them. They're fun to watch. But I think for that program, when something like that happens, you can build off that. You know what I mean? Because now girls get inspired. Now they want to come work out in the summers because they know what they're capable of doing. And I think they were a year behind. So this is great for Rogers.
I was saying that probably the most memorable high school game, boys game now, I'll say, that I can remember over the years at BCSN was that Central Whitmer game that we talked about where they used that delay game. And from the girls' standpoint, the night Zia Cook got her 2,000th point and they stopped the game and gave her the game ball and everything, that was just something I'll never forget. 2,000
points. Think about that. That's crazy.
1,000 is like, that's something you etch in stone, right? But 2,000 for one player.
Years, wow, it's amazing.
And I was right at the start of the show, and I was talking about the national record by Scotty Buff and seeing the state record for the high jump set by Eric Kennard, and he went on and became an Olympic champion. That's why I think Scotty Buff might become an Olympic champion.
No. He's definitely he's on the radar, and he's definitely gonna get an opportunity, especially when you're putting numbers. See, those are number sports. It doesn't matter the division. It doesn't matter if I got a stopwatch. If I can measure the height, those are measurables, okay? And as long as he's doing what he's doing at that level, he's going to get a shot.
One other game that we should mention, a heartbreaker for Toledo Christian boys. They lost to Antwerp by 1. And again, we're talking about all these great coaches and like Jim Welling and Dave Boyce and Jamie Kasmerick and players and coaches that have done such a great job over the years. And I think that another one here is like Dave McQuinney. He really just instilled a system, and they play very much the same way at Toledo Christian they do at Perrysburg, and he instilled it so well that it has lived beyond his tenure. And they play great basketball there, and it was unfortunate for them that they fell just 1 point short against Antwerp.
So I have bragging rights on Dave. I think I beat him when he was first as a co-coach. So Dave, I know you're watching this. I got to throw that out there, but you're right. He did instill a good system. Kids love playing for him too, and they play a fun style of basketball. It's not boring. Those guys defend. I mean, they take threes, they penetrate. Yeah, I mean, and if you get them inside their gym, they're very capable of beating anybody. I don't know what it is about that gym over at TC, but it's just magical in there. Those guys play really well. But good season. They had an injury too, so their point guard goes out, Gaston, which you take him out of the mix. You're taking an all-league player, and I think he was averaging maybe around 16 points, somewhere in that area. So you take that out, and the season they still had with Carter Kester and a couple other players, I thought they did a great job. They'll be back next year.
Yeah, he had a good game, Carter, 16 points last night. Another, just talking about the attack, as we've mentioned about Maumee Valley and Stritch and Toledo Christian, but I was thoroughly impressed. Again, it comes down to great coaching, but Ottawa Hills, in the first game of the season, they were playing against Maumee Valley, a really good Maumee Valley team, and they only had 7 players, and yet they were leading late in the game, or they had 9 players, maybe 7, and then their 2 top players, including A.J. George, who was their real leader, got injured, and now they're playing literally with 7 guys, and they were still playing tremendous basketball, and they could have won a lot of games that they didn't have any business winning based on that.
Coach Lindsay never has been deep, Greg. I mean, I'm being honest, and he'll tell you that. So, this is kind of par for the course with him. He's always done it with less. He's always done it with just the guys that came through the system, and they've always been tough. So, Coach Lindsay, you talk about a guy, and I always talk about this, he and Boyce are Cardinal Stritch grads. So I don't know what it is on that east side in the water that makes these guys, develop into great coaches or whatever. But Coach Lindsay, and he's just such a great person too. If you ever get a chance to sit down, talk to him, super nice guy. I remember when I first came into the TAC, he was one of the first guys that really welcomed me, and I've always been appreciative of that. So if you're watching, Coach, thank you very much. John
Lindsay and Tim Reiser helping him out, and Tim Reiser's a great coach in his own right. We mentioned Ed Heinschel earlier. I always knew it, but when you sit down and you systematically talk about it and you think about all the coaches that have come through here, it's really very impressive, the number of coaches that really, really do such a tremendous job, and then they coach the game the way it's meant to be played, and they produce fine young men too, or young women in the case.
Take it a step further. I mean, look at Urban Meyer. Look at Coach Harbaugh. Look at Coach Pelini. Look at the Stoops. Guys, I'm giving you some history. This is Ohio coaching. We have so many great guys. I know you can go there, Greg. So I'm a be quiet because I know you got a lot of knowledge here, but. No, it's something about guys that really enjoy the game and study the game, and they pass it down to the kids the right way. So when we're saying it's being coached the right way, see, I watch more than just X's and O's. I watch demeanor. I watch how they run practices. Are these guys organized? I watch what they do in timeouts. Everybody's all in. To me, that's what makes a good coach, and these guys mastered that.
Yep. I know so much that I've forgotten most of it. That's probably the best way to say it. Well, we had some great games last night. We've got some great games coming up, and
we got Emmanuel coming up too.
Yeah.
And that's a team I think that can really, really go some places. That's been,
Well, again, when you've got an Easter to start with, that's you can build a lot around that.
They got size. I think they're going to be okay until the regional. The regional's tough for everybody. Let's just call it what it is. But I think they have the pieces to maybe get to Dayton.
Yeah, I would not be one iota surprised about that. And who knows, maybe we'll have some more. The Toledo Christian girls, they play really outstanding too. And Coach Wensink has really got them playing just like the boys played under Dave McQuinney. And they've got a real good chance, I think, to make it to state also.
Oh, I think so too. They just, once again, but in the regional.
They play Crestview coming up next.
But it gets tough, in the regional. That's when everybody can coach, everybody can play. And it gets, if you make it out, I mean, heck, you make it out of the district, it's going to be tough. But the regional is definitely, I think, the best teams usually make it there. So we're going to see what happens.
They got Kendall Braden is an outstanding guard, and Madison Royal Davis, who she was sort of the heir apparent there for Zia Cook, and she's done a lot of the same things too that we were talking about with Kendall Carruthers. She's doing what the team asked her to do. Maybe she's not scoring as much as she did back in the Rogers days.
No, that's the sister. That's the sister.
Okay,
she's at
okay,
Butler.
Yeah. Okay,
but the younger sister is playing really well. She's rebounding, so that is the tandem that you're looking at, Braden and Royal Davis. They're doing an outstanding. They got that little inside-out combination thing that they're working.
See, I told you I have so much knowledge you forget sometimes.
That's all right.
That's right, and doing a great job there with that Toledo Christian team. So, well, hey, we appreciate your joining us here today on the BCSN Nation podcast. It was my pleasure to step in for Justin Feldkamp, hope he's having a great time in Italy. Hope he makes the time to get to Rome and Florence and see the Leaning Tower and all those, and obviously get on the gondolas
just
too.
Just a train ride,
right,
man.
exactly.
Take the train.
Those great trains are great. And great to see you again here, Coach.
Always, man. Great, Greg. So we got to get back together again soon, guys.
Just as long as it's not in the jiu-jitsu mat. That's fine.
Man, I'm getting old.
All right, thanks for being with us, guys. So long.